Most people are trying to burn fat the completely wrong way. They cut calories, push harder, and wonder why nothing changes. The fat they are fighting does not respond to effort alone. It responds to something far more powerful and far more invisible. There is a type of fat that behaves like an organ. It wraps around your liver, pancreas, and intestines like a shield. Scientists call it visceral fat, and it is not like other fat. You cannot pinch it, see it, or feel it from outside, but it is silently shaping your metabolism every single hour of the day. And here's what almost nobody tells you about visceral fat. It does not disappear when you work out harder or longer. It disappears when your body stops feeling the need to protect it. That distinction is everything, and most fitness advice completely ignores it. To understand why, you need to understand how visceral fat actually behaves. Unlike the fat just beneath your skin, visceral fat is biologically active. It is loaded with hormone receptors that are constantly reading your body. These receptors are specifically tuned to two hormones above all others. Those two hormones are insulin and cortisol, your storage and stress signals. When insulin rises, visceral fat receives a very clear biological instruction. That instruction is simple and ancient and almost impossible to override by force. Lock down, store energy, do not release anything until conditions feel safe. When cortisol rises sharply and stays high, the message becomes even stronger. The body interprets that signal as danger, scarcity, or unpredictable conditions ahead. In response, visceral fat tightens its grip on every calorie it holds. This is not a flaw in your biology, it is a feature. Thousands of years ago, humans needed energy reserves close to vital organs. If food disappeared or danger arrived, that fat kept the body alive. Your brain still runs the same ancient survival software every single day, and modern life is accidentally triggering that software almost every morning you wake up. Here is the part that will completely change how you think about fat loss. The most important metabolic decision your body makes does not happen at the gym. It does not happen at dinner or during your late-night snack. It happens in the first 60 minutes after you open your eyes. That early morning window quietly programs how your metabolism behaves for the next 12 hours. Two people can eat identical meals and follow the same exercise program, but if their mornings send different hormonal signals, their results will be completely different. The morning is not just the beginning of your day in a calendar sense. It is a biological reset that determines whether your body burns energy or hoards it. When you wake up, your body is already making decisions without your input. Cortisol naturally begins to rise, a process called the cortisol awakening response. This rise is healthy and necessary. It helps shift you from sleep to alertness. At the same time, your liver quietly releases glucose into your bloodstream. This glucose is intended to give your brain and muscles fuel for early activity. Insulin levels at this point are naturally low because you haven't eaten yet. This creates a rare and powerful metabolic window that most people accidentally destroy. In this window, glucose is circulating freely and insulin has not yet risen. Your body is essentially standing at a crossroads, waiting for a signal. It is asking one simple question that determines everything about your metabolism today. Is this environment safe enough to use energy freely and openly right now? Or is it unpredictable and threatening, meaning energy must be stored and protected? Your hormones answer that question before your conscious mind even forms a thought. If your morning begins with stress, rushing, overstimulation, or a high sugar meal, the answer is clear. Store everything. Lock it down. The environment feels dangerous and unpredictable right now. But if your morning begins with something different, the answer shifts completely. Calm movement, natural light, and gradual activation send a very different biological message. That message tells the body the environment is stable, safe, and predictable today. Energy can flow, fuel can be used, stored reserves do not need protecting. This is where a deceptively simple behavior becomes one of the most powerful metabolic tools available. Gentle walking, done shortly after waking, interacts with your biology at a precise moment. It does not look impressive. It does not feel like much effort at all. But what it does inside your body at that specific moment is remarkable. When muscles contract during a relaxed walk, they activate a specific transport mechanism. This mechanism does not require insulin to function, and that is the entire point. It moves proteins called GLUT4 transporters to the surface of your muscle cells. These proteins act like tiny doors that swing open and pull glucose inside. Glucose flows from your blood directly into your muscles, where it is burned as fuel. Because this process bypasses insulin, your insulin levels do not need to spike at all. Glucose gets used, insulin stays low, and that changes everything that follows. When insulin remains low, visceral fat is no longer chemically locked away from access. The body no longer receives the instruction to hold and protect its stored reserves. Instead, visceral fat gradually becomes available as an additional and secondary fuel source. This does not create a dramatic fat-burning explosion in the space of one morning. Anyone who promises that is selling you a fantasy that biology does not support. What it does instead is far more valuable and far more lasting than that. It shifts the metabolic preference of your entire body for the hours ahead. Your body becomes more comfortable and more capable of switching between glucose and stored fat. Scientists call this metabolic flexibility, and it is one of the most important markers of health. When metabolic flexibility improves, your body no longer clings to carbohydrates as its only fuel. It learns to dip into fat stores naturally, especially during the hours between meals. Visceral fat, which is uniquely sensitive to insulin levels, is among the first to respond. Not dramatically, not overnight, but consistently, reliably, and in the right direction over time. Now here is where timing becomes the decisive factor that most people completely overlook. Walking is not magical. The act of walking itself is not the key ingredient here. What makes it powerful is the biological moment in which the walking actually happens. Early morning movement arrives exactly when the body is deciding how energy will flow all day. When the signals align correctly in that window, the body does not need to be forced. The conditions naturally allow fat to be accessed, used, and gradually reduced over time. But when the timing is wrong, even intense and exhausting effort produces the opposite result. This is one of the most important and least discussed paradoxes in all of metabolism. Let us go deeper into what your body is doing during those first waking hours. Your liver is already active the moment you open your eyes in the morning. It begins releasing glucose into your bloodstream to fuel your brain and muscles immediately. This is a completely healthy and necessary process that your body has always performed. But what happens to that glucose in the minutes after waking determines your metabolic fate. If that glucose circulates too long without being absorbed, your pancreas releases insulin. Insulin then signals every cell in your body to absorb and store that energy. Muscle cells, liver cells, and fat cells all receive the storage instruction simultaneously.
And while that sounds helpful, it creates a serious metabolic side effect most people miss. When insulin rises, your body temporarily shuts off access to every single stored fat reserve. Fat oxidation slows, visceral fat becomes chemically inaccessible, the fat-burning window quietly closes. And this can happen before breakfast, before your workout, before you even leave the house. A sedentary morning spent lying in bed, scrolling your phone, or sitting at a desk can do this. Inactivity allows circulating glucose to build up. Insulin rises to manage it. The window closes. You have not eaten poorly. You have not skipped exercise, but your metabolism is already in storage mode. This is the quiet damage of sedentary mornings that no calorie counting app will ever show you. Now here is the good news, and it is genuinely very good news for most people. Your body has a built-in mechanism specifically designed to prevent this from happening. That mechanism is muscle contraction, and it can be activated by something as simple as walking. When muscles move rhythmically and continuously, the GLUT4 transporters arrive at the cell surface. They absorb circulating glucose without requiring insulin to issue the command first. Blood glucose drops naturally. Insulin has no reason to spike. The window stays open. And with insulin remaining low, visceral fat stays unlocked and available as a fuel source. Over the next several hours, the body keeps drawing on both glucose and fat for energy. This is metabolic flexibility working exactly as it was designed to work in the human body. The liver also begins to respond and adapt to this early pattern of activity. When it senses that muscles are actively absorbing glucose during the morning, it adjusts accordingly. It reduces its own unnecessary glucose production during the afternoon and evening hours. This stabilizes blood sugar across the rest of the day in a meaningful and lasting way. Stable blood sugar leads to calmer insulin responses throughout every meal you eat that day. And calmer insulin responses mean fat stores remain accessible, not locked, throughout the entire day. Cortisol also plays a deeply important role that most people completely misunderstand and overlook. Cortisol is not simply a stress hormone. It follows a natural and healthy daily rhythm. The cortisol awakening response causes it to rise in the morning to support alertness and energy. When your morning activity is gentle and calm, cortisol follows its intended natural curve beautifully. It rises enough to sharpen focus and mobilize energy, then gradually declines through the afternoon. But when morning begins with aggressive exercise, psychological stress, or heavy stimulant use, cortisol spikes sharply. It rises faster and stays elevated far longer than your biology was ever designed to support. Prolonged high cortisol sends a powerful defensive message to every fat cell in your body. The environment is unpredictable. Resources may become scarce. Hold on to every reserve you have. Visceral fat does not loosen, it tightens. It becomes more protected, not less, under chronic stress. This explains a paradox that genuinely confuses and frustrates millions of highly motivated people every year. Intense morning exercise has real cardiovascular benefits and absolutely builds strength and endurance over time. But when performed immediately after waking, in a fasted and stressed state, it can backfire metabolically. The hormonal environment created by that intensity can encourage energy conservation for hours afterward. Your body interprets the extreme effort as a threat and responds by protecting its energy stores. Low-stress movement sends a completely opposite message to that same hormonal system in your body. It signals that the body can transition safely and smoothly from rest into gentle daily activity. Energy flows instead of being locked away. Hormones remain stable. The metabolism stays flexible and open.
That difference may look small in the moment, but accumulated over months, it becomes enormous. Small, repeated hormonal signals build into large and permanent metabolic shifts over time. People searching for dramatic fat loss strategies often miss the most effective lever entirely because it is quiet. The body does not respond reliably to constant pressure, punishment, or metabolic extremes you force upon it. What it responds to with remarkable reliability is consistent and aligned biological signaling every single day. A calm, repeatable morning routine can shift the entire metabolic tone of the hours that follow. The routine itself needs only 10 or 15 minutes to send the right biological message clearly. But the hormonal signals it creates ripple forward through 12 hours of energy metabolism. That is the hidden leverage point that almost no one in the fitness world ever discusses. Fat loss is not determined solely by how many calories you eat or burn each day. It is shaped by when and whether your body believes it is safe to use energy. When that decision is made correctly in the early morning, the rest often follows naturally. So what does the actual routine look like when it is done correctly and consistently? The first step is light exposure, and it begins the moment you open your eyes. Within minutes of waking, stepping outside or standing near a bright window makes a measurable difference. Natural daylight enters the eye and travels to the suprachiasmatic nucleus in the brain. This is the brain's master circadian clock, and morning light synchronizes its entire daily rhythm. When the clock is properly set, every downstream hormone follows a more predictable and stable pattern. Cortisol peaks at the right time, insulin sensitivity improves, appetite hormones regulate themselves more accurately. This single behavior, just a few minutes of morning light, sets the hormonal tone for everything else. The second step is gentle movement, and gentle is not a suggestion, it is the entire point. A relaxed, unhurried walk lasting 10 to 20 minutes is the most effective form for this purpose. Not a jog, not a fast-paced power walk, not an interval session, a relaxed, rhythmic walk. During this walk, muscles contract continuously without triggering a significant stress response in the body. GLUT4 transporters activate. Circulating glucose is absorbed, insulin stays low, fat remains accessible. The metabolic window that opened naturally during sleep stays open instead of shutting shut, and the entire hormonal environment of the day bends slightly but meaningfully toward energy usage. The third step is patience with food timing, and this one surprises most people when they hear it. Eating immediately upon waking, especially high sugar or high carbohydrate foods, rapidly spikes insulin. When that spike happens right after waking, the metabolic window created by movement closes almost immediately. Waiting a short period between waking, moving, and eating helps preserve the low insulin environment longer. This does not mean extreme fasting, skipping meals, or punishing yourself with unnecessary hunger in the morning. It simply means giving your body time to transition naturally before flooding it with incoming energy. When light, movement, and patient food timing combine, the body receives one clear and consistent message. Energy is available, the environment is safe, stored reserves can be gradually and safely released now. That message is the biological opposite of what a rushed, stressed, stimulant-heavy morning produces. But there are also several common mistakes that can completely undermine this entire approach very quickly. The most frequent mistake is turning the morning walk into a competitive or intense workout session. People assume harder is always better, so they increase pace, add hills, or push until breathless.
The moment the body perceives that activity as genuinely stressful, cortisol spikes sharply and quickly. The metabolic message flips from release to protect, and visceral fat locks itself down immediately. Another common mistake is loading up on large amounts of caffeine immediately after waking each morning. Caffeine amplifies the cortisol awakening response when taken too early and in excessive quantities. Stacking stimulants on top of already rising cortisol pushes the nervous system into a state of urgency. Instead of a calm metabolic transition, the body is forced into fight-or-flight chemistry unnecessarily. A third mistake is overextending the routine by walking too long or skipping food entirely for hours.
This can drop blood sugar too low, which forces cortisol to rise to compensate for the deficit. Insulin rebounds sharply when food is finally eaten, and the very window you work to protect closes. The routine works because it aligns with natural physiology, not because it overwhelms or punishes the system. Short, calm, and consistent behaviors will always outperform extreme strategies applied occasionally and inconsistently. Over days and weeks, the effects of this routine begin to visibly and measurably accumulate. Morning glucose is handled more efficiently. Afternoon energy levels become noticeably steadier and more reliable. Appetite feels more regulated and less driven by cravings and blood sugar swings throughout the day. The body becomes increasingly comfortable and capable of drawing on stored fat between meals naturally. Visceral fat does not vanish overnight, but the hormonal environment that protects it slowly dissolves. When the body repeatedly receives signals of safety, stability, and smooth energy flow each morning, something shifts. The defensive purpose of visceral fat begins to fade because the biological threat it was protecting against is gone. Instead of clinging tightly to its reserves, the body begins to release them gradually and willingly. This is the quiet, unglamorous, deeply effective biology of sustainable, long-term fat loss. It does not require punishment. It does not require exhaustion. It does not require extreme and rigid discipline. It requires creating the right conditions for the body to function the way it was always designed to. And sometimes those conditions are built through surprisingly small behaviors performed at the right time of day. So the next time you wake up, do not immediately ask how many calories you will burn today. Ask a different and far more important question instead, one that your body is already waiting to answer. What message is my morning sending to my metabolism right now, in this exact moment? Did today begin with calm, light, and gentle movement that signals safety and stable energy flow? Or did it begin with rushing, stress, and stimulation that signals danger and the need to protect? Those two beginnings may look nearly identical from the outside to any casual observer watching you, but inside your body, they are sending your metabolism in two completely opposite and diverging directions. And over weeks, months, and years of repetition, those directions produce two completely different bodies. If you want to test this for yourself without risking anything or changing your entire life overnight, try this. For the next 7 days, wake up and get 10 minutes of natural morning light immediately. Then take a slow, relaxed 15-minute walk before eating anything significant for breakfast that morning. Do not change your diet aggressively. Do not add intense workouts on top of this experiment. Simply observe what happens to your energy, your hunger, your focus, and your mood throughout each day. Your body will give you feedback that is far more informative than any scale reading ever could, because visceral fat is not burned through force, willpower, or sheer exhaustion of effort over time.